Hey, it's that time again. Time for another episode of Shelve It or Shove It, the completely superficial way to pick books for your TBR based solely on their covers. And I am your host, Daisy X Machina, the drag queen detective who investigates all things speculative in science fiction, fantasy, and horror. I'll be looking at Goodreads new releases in the categories of science fiction, fantasy, and horror for the month of June to pick one book to add to my TBR to be read in July. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with science fiction. And first up is The Stardust Grail by Yumi Kitase, author of Deep Sky. I'm underwhelmed with this cover. There is sort of this red stardust, I assume, and it's pretty simple, but I do see peeking out a tentacle or tentacles. Maybe it's sort of a cosmic horror. I don't know. I'm not very impressed. So I'm going to go ahead and shove it. Next up is The Stars Too Fondly by Emily Hamilton. And it looks like a rom-sci. Rom-sci is the term I coined for romantic science fiction. It's my version of fetch. Let's try to make it work, people. Anyway, I like this illustration. I like the two people coming together. I like the colors. I like the blocking, but I am not a fan of romance. And if this is going to be a romance-heavy book, I'm probably not going to enjoy it, even if it looks like a lesbian version of some rom-sci. So I'm going to have to shove it. Next up is Rake's Fall by Vajra Chandra Sakira. Apologies if I mess up the name. It's a very bright cover. It does not look like science fiction. It looks like fantasy, but it's in science fiction. It has the tagline, "Will you follow me to the end?" So, the end of the world? I don't know. There is a skull, and I don't know what that's a skull of. It almost looks like a grasshopper? I don't know. There's a lot of pink and purple and flowers. This could be another rom-sci. I'm going to go ahead and shove it. Next up is You're Safe Here by Leslie Stevens. What is it with science fiction this month? I don't like this cover at all. It's a woman's face. It looks like it's a little pixelated or blurred, so I'm going to say it's going to be some type of AI or robot science fiction. But I am not loving this cover at all, so I'm going to shove it. And finally, in science fiction is Moonbound by Robin Sloan, author of Mr. Penumbra's 24-Hour Bookstore. Well, I like the title Mr. Penumbra's 24-Hour Bookstore, but that's not what we're looking at. We're looking at Moonbound, and I guess it's my favorite of the science fiction covers, but I don't know. I kind of like there's like this rip in this red sky that has this space scene behind it. And is that like a rocket ship going down? And I guess this is a planet. There's a city and a river. I'm not quite sure what this is about. And could it be a comedy, humorous science fiction? Maybe. I'm curious about this one, but I don't think this is one I'm going to pick up based on the cover. So I am going to shove it. So I ended up picking 0 books in science fiction. Let's hope fantasy does better. first up in fantasy is The Cautious Traveler's Guide to the Wastelands by Sarah Brooks. Very simple cover. There's this ribbon with the title on it, and I guess that's a train going around the border. Oh, and so the title is actually The Smoke from the Smokestack? Maybe? I don't know. I'm not a big fan of this cover. It's a little simple, it's a little dingy, and for those reasons I like the title though. I do like the title, but I'm going to go ahead and shove it. Next up is Daughter of Calamity by Rosalie M. Lynn. Danger wears many faces is the tagline. And yeah, I like this illustration. I'm not really sure what this is about. From the title, maybe it's a assassin? I don't know. Daughter of Calamity. And I do like this woman's face. I like the artwork, but what is it about? What could this be about? Again, I'm just looking at the covers, and because of that, I'm going to have to shove it. Next up is Mirrored Heavens by Rebecca Roanhorse, Between Earth and Sky, Book 3. I haven't read Book 1 and 2, so I'm not going to be picking this one, but I do like this cover. I like this, I guess it's a sea, ocean, underwater theme with these tentacles, and it looks like these seaweed type things around her. Maybe this is a mermaid story. I don't know. I've heard so much about Rebecca Roanhorse. I do want to read more. I think I read a little middle grade thing she did, but I haven't read any of their adult works. And I do like this cover, but it's book 3. So obviously I'm going to shove it. And finally in fantasy is The God in the Gumiho by Sophie Kim. And it's book 1 of Fate's Thread. I like this illustration, really worried this is a romantasy, and I'm really not into romantasies, but I do like this illustration. I like this dragon, and I like the two people seated or floating or something, and it's a pretty cover, but I'm not into romantasy, and that's what I think this is. So I'm going to have to shove it. Okay, guys, I have not shelved anything in science fiction or fantasy. All that's left is horror. So I just basically pull 5 books I haven't picked before in new releases in horror, even though it might not be for the month of June. So they're in alphabetical order. Let's just go through these 5 that I've grabbed. And first up is Bless Your Heart by Lindy Ryan. And I kind of do like this cover. It's a very illustrated graphic art picture of a woman with fangs. So this is obviously vampire. Bless your heart. And bless your heart means up yours in the South. If you ever hear anyone from the South say, oh, bless your heart, that's not a compliment. This gives me True Blood vibes a lot. I think this is going to be a humorous sort of horror, campy vampire story. And I do like this cover. So let's go ahead and shelve it. Next up is Your Blood, My Bones by Kelly Andrew, author of Whispering Dark. There's 2 hands. There's 2 people holding hands. I think I've seen this cover before. Have I seen this under young adult? I don't know. Someone can remind me. But I think this is young adult, and I think this is romance type of horror. Maybe it's like a zombie romance type thing, although it has vines, so I'm not sure. But I don't think this is a type of book I'm going to be into, so I'm going to have to Shove it. Next up is The Gathering by C.J. Tudor, author of The Chalkman. And this is really boring. We have this winter scene. There is this man in a snowdrift or walking down a snowy street. I'm not sure what type of horror this is. I'm going to say ghost story, maybe, or maybe there's some weird snow monster. Not calling to me. I'm going to go ahead and shove it. Next up is Hearts Still Beating by Brooke Archer. The world ended, love did not. I think it's going to be another horror romance, end of the world, end of days type of thing. I'm not here for it. I do kind of like the illustration, the cracked earth and the flowers and whatnot. It's very vibrant and saturated. I like that, but again, I don't think this is a type of horror novel I'll be into, so I'm going to go ahead and shove it. And finally, in horror, Someone You Can Build a Nest In by John Wiswell. This is crazy pants. I kind of love it. It's giving me Halloween vibes because there's this orange and there's this big witch and this witch's hat. And the face on the witch kind of looks like a jack-o'-lantern, kind of not. It looks cosmic horror or Lovecraftian horror because of the tentacles. But the title, Someone You Can Build a Nest In, is giving me body snatchers or some type of parasite horror, and I'm kind of loving that. And the cover is whimsical enough that I think this may be a little campy, a little maybe humorous horror. I don't know. I'm really intrigued. I am very intrigued by this very strange cover. So I'm going to go ahead and shelve it. Okay, I only shelved 2 books this month, and I didn't shelve any science fiction or fantasy. Thank goodness there were some horror books that sparked my interest, and that is Bless Your Heart by Lindy Ryan and Someone You Can Build a Nest In by John Wiswell. I think they're both going to be kind of campy, humorous, I think. But the one that's really calling to me, which you probably realized when I was talking about it, is Someone You Can Build a Nest In. The title alone is pretty amazing, but this campy, Halloween, cosmic horror, Lovecraftian illustration is just amazing. And there's chains, there's just so much going on. Is that a spaceship or an alien? I don't know. I'm going to find out though. I am going to find out. So let's go ahead and read the blurb and see what I've gotten myself into. Discover this creepy, charming, monster-slaying fantasy romance from the perspective of the monster by Nebula award-winning debut author John Wiswell. Shishi Shen has made a mistake fatal to all monsters. She's fallen in love. Shishi Shen is a shapeshifter who happily resides as an amorphous lump at the bottom of a ruined manor. When her rest is interrupted by hunters intent on murdering her, she constructs a body from the remains of past meals, a metal chain for a backbone, borrowed bones for limbs, and a bear trap as an extra mouth. However, the hunters chase Shishi Shen out of her home and off a cliff. Badly hurt, she's found and nursed back to health by Homily, a warm-hearted human who has mistaken Shishi Shen as a fellow human. Homily is kind and nurturing and would make an excellent co-parent, an ideal place to lay Shishi Shen's eggs so their young could devour Homily from the inside out. But as they grow close, she realizes humans don't think about love that way. Shishi Shen hates keeping her identity secret from Homily, but just as she's about to confess, Homily reveals why she's in the area. she's hunting a shape-shifting monster that supposedly cursed her family. Has Shishi Shen seen it anywhere? Eating her girlfriend isn't an option. Shishi Shen didn't curse anyone, but to give herself in Homily a chance at happiness, she has to figure out why Homily's twisted family thinks she did. As the hunt for the monster becomes increasingly deadly, Shishi Shen must unearth the truth quickly, or soon both of their lives will be at risk. And the bigger challenge remains, surviving her toxic in-laws long enough to learn to build a life with, rather than in, the love of her life. Oh my gosh, this seems crazy cute. I know I said I'm not a big fan of romance, and I know this obviously is a romance, but it's very twisted, and I am very, very curious about it. And I'm really glad I picked this book. One thing I'm curious about is it says it's a debut, but he's a Nebula Award-winning author, so maybe his Nebula win was for a short story or a novella or something like that. I am very curious about this one. Okay, guys, let me know what you would have picked based solely on their covers. Let me know down in the comments. And while you're there, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Until we meet again, may all the books you read be blessed.